I also have heard, Mr. Logan Naidu, that you have read one book, Unleash Your Magic.
Yeah.
So after you told me, I have started reading this book, and I got so much insights from this book.
Right.
What I want to know, from where you got this inspiration to write this book?
That's another good question, really. You know, I mentioned briefly early on, whenever I attended an MDRT annual meeting, like my first meeting, 1987 Chicago, it was a life transformative experience. I mean, when I gave a feedback on the meeting to a group of 200 agents in Durban, from all parts of KwaZulu-Natal they'd come, the first word I said was magic.
Okay.
But I opened it because that's what it was like to me. It was magic. I mean, I listened to some of the greatest speakers on earth. You know, one in particular called Lewis Tice. He was the one that spoke on this whole concept of visualization. And he was advisor, right, to half of the Fortune 500 companies.
Okay.
So who am I to disagree with this guy, regarded as one of the top 3 motivational speakers in the world? So I said, I'm going to listen to this guy, and whatever he says, any reservations I have, I'm going to put it behind me, and I'm going to practice whatever he tells us to do. And he spoke about this concept of visualization.
Okay.
And it was fascinating to me. I mean, it was just absolutely amazing. I was riveted, made a note of every single word that he'd spoken. And besides that, there were many other high caliber speakers. I mean, I picked up so much, and I always make a lot of notes. So any conferences I go to, I make copious notes, right? Okay. So that I can, you know, revise, go over it, and learn from that, really. So I'd made lots of notes of all the different speakers that spoke there. And and I also believed, Ranjit, and this was important, that you must give back to the industry.
Correct.
Right? So I served on executives of financial bodies, you know, insurance-related bodies, representing insurance agents. We had a thing called Life Underwriters Association of South Africa. So I was on the executive committee, you know, at that point in time. Got back from MDRT. The chairman, you know, executive meeting, he says, you know, I need somebody to give a feedback on the latest MDRT meeting in Chicago. So he looks around the table. I was the only one that attended. Nobody else had attended.
Okay.
So, you know, he said, who attended? He knew that I'd attended. He says, right, Logan, you know, you got the task of giving a 45-minute feedback on the meeting, the highlights from the meeting. And so that's when I started looking at my notes, prepared a 45-minute talk, rehearsed it I don't know how many times, and presented it to 200 agents from all different companies, brokers, etc. And I got a standing ovation.
Okay.
So I realized I just picked the gems from all these talks, including visualization. And you know, I remember the very first meeting I went to, they quoted Lebanese poet Khalil Gibran, who said, you give but little when you give off your possessions. It's when you give off yourself that you truly give, right? So this whole concept of giving and so forth. So visualization was a big deal for me because I'd applied it in my own life. I was making the top 100 in my company. Once I got the formula, I said, right, I want to make the top 25. They go to an overseas trip and so forth. So I practiced exactly what Lou Tice had taught us. And lo and behold, I made top 25 that year and many years thereafter. So I practiced the concepts. So every other year I went to MDRT, I had to give a feedback presentation. So remember I told you I'd been to 17 meetings. So by the time we got to the year 2014, 2013, 2014, I'd had a lot of these feedback presentation notes that I'd made. And I realized, you know, this would make an ideal book, right? So that was the genesis, that was the basis of me coming up with this book. The first edition was way back in 2013.
Okay.
Then 2014 was the second edition. And we'll talk about the rest of the stuff thereafter when I came to India and so forth.
Okay.
And this is actually the third completely revamped edition.